Why is it so that some people seem to be happy, carrying smile in their faces, even in adverse times, even in the saddest moments, whereas some people seem to be unhappy, sad, even in good times? Why is it so that some people become angry, lose temper, become anxious, even in cool times, whereas some people go cool, even in the most difficult moments of their lives? Why some people are quiet and passive, while others are loud and aggressive? Before we can answer these queries, these interesting questions, we need to address a more basic one, a more fundamental one. What is personality? Our personalities shape our behaviors. So if we want to better understand the behavior of someone in a family, in a group, in a society, or in an organization, it helps if we know something about his or her personality. When psychologists talk of personality, they mean a dynamic concept describing the growth and development of a person's whole psychological system. Rather than looking at parts of the person, personality looks at some aggregate whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. The definition of personality we most frequently use was produced by Gordon Allport years ago. He said, personality is the dynamic organization within the individual of those psychophysical systems that determine his unique adjustments to his environment. You should think of personality as the sum total of ways in which an individual reacts to and interacts with others. We most often describe it in terms of the measurable traits a person exhibits. Here, in the definition of Allport, one term is important, that is unique, and another is adjustments, unique adjustments to his environments. This unique adjustment is such a feature that has been exhibited by the humans since the inception of the human civilization in order to maintain the struggle for existence and survival and living throughout the ages. And this struggle against the nature, against the society, against each other, supporting each other, whereas to stand out as humans, this struggle has been possible only after humans, they develop certain traits and types within their systems. And those traits and types are the determining factors for the building of personality. Traits are somewhat like the core of the earth, whereas types are somewhat like the earth's crust, wherein what we see is core of the earth remains stable in the nature, in the characteristics throughout the ages, whereas the crust keeps on changing, keeps on shifting, and we can associate the idea of core and the crust in the case of personality. Personality is made up of these two flat features. One is trait and another is type. Trait is central and type is external, wherein traits, whatever traits an individual develops throughout the childhood, remains almost unaltered throughout the life, whereas the types keep on shifting, keeps on shaping and reshaping. And this is how the entire gamut of personality, which is the combination of traits and types, keeps on becoming dynamic throughout the life of an individual. That's why personality is never static. It's a dynamic feature of an individual. The term personality has been derived from Latin word persona, which literally means to speak through. In other sense, it even denotes masks, which the theater actors used to wear in ancient Greece and Rome. Personality is used in terms of influencing others through external appearance. That's why. Mere external appearance, though important for personality characteristics, does not make the whole personality. According to Rutch, personality should include external appearance, inner awareness, and the particular pattern or organization of measurable traits, both inner and outer. Now, we will see what are the sources of personality. Although there are various sources of personality, we can classify 4 sources. One is genetics, another one social learning, another one culture, and the personal experiences. Genes play a significant role in basically the external as well as internal biological features of an individual, starting from the height, color of the skin, the voice, the gender. All these things depend on genetics. And then social learning, which is very significant in any individual's lives. It is the society, after family, it is the society that becomes the school for an individual. Even if somebody does not go to school, it is the society that teaches the lessons of the life, lessons of the world to that individual. We can take the example, very classic example of Nobel laureate, our own pride of India, Kavi Guru Rabindranath Tagore. He never went to school after class 4. But then he became the Nobel laureate. How? By social learning. Maxim Gorky, the world-renowned author, whose book Mother has been sold for millions of copies. He also did not attend the schools after certain class. But then he became the world-renowned author. Thomas Alva Edison, the great scientist, he also did not go to college. But then he became one of the noted scientists in the history of science. So social learning is something which we can never discard in the building of personality. Culture, cultural background also plays an important role in shaping your personality. Then comes personal experience. It depends from person to person. Whatever experiences you gather throughout your childhood will be acting as the sources of your personality development. Now, what are the features of personality? Personality is always unique for each individual. That's why even the twins, although they look identical, They don't have same kind of personality. Personality refers particularly to the persistent qualities of an individual. Most of the qualities will become persistent after certain level of creation of the personality in individual. Personality represents a dynamic orientation of an organism to the environment. It is influenced by social interactions. It represents a unique organization of persistent dynamic and social predisposition. Personality is both psychological and physiological matter of study. It impacts behaviors and actions. And personality is having multiple expressions. Now we will see what are the determinants, that is the factors of personality building. Environmental factors, physical factors, situational factors, hereditary factors, family or social factors, identification process, cultural factors, intelligence, sex differences, and psychological factors play important role in personality building. Now we will see what are the theories that deal with personality. Many personality theories, not only from the field of psychology but even from other fields dealing with human behavior, have carried on researches to find answers to the questions: what is personality, what does personality constitute, how is behavior governed by personality. The various theorists, however, could not give the perfect answer on which consensus could be reached. Rather, these have resulted into a number of theories of personalities. The most logical grouping of personality theories seems to be into: number 1, psychoanalytic theory; number 2, sociopsychological theory; number 3, trait theories; and number 4, self theories. We'll discuss briefly what are those theories. Firstly, let's take psychoanalytic theory. Psychoanalytic theory is based on the notion that man is motivated more by unseen forces than he is controlled by conscious and rational thought. Although Dr. Sigmund Freud is most closely related with his theory, others such as Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, Karen Horney, and Erich Fromm, who all broke from Freud, made additional contributions. Dr. Freud noted that his patient's behavior could not always be consciously explained. This clinical finding led him to conclude that major motivating force in man was unconscious framework. This framework contains 3 aspects, as per Dr. Sigmund Freud. These are id, ego, and superego. They are so interrelated that they can only be artificially separated for individual study and analysis. The id. What is id? The id is the source of psychic energy and seeks immediate gratification for biological or instinctual needs. Freud believed that instinct could be classified under life instincts. Life instincts such as hunger, thirst, and sex. The energy involved in their activity is the libido. The id would proceed unchecked to satisfy motives. But even then, it remains a driving force throughout the life. What is ego? The ego is the conscious part, the logical part of the human personality, and is associated with the reality principle. While id represents the unconscious part, ego is conscious. Thus, ego keeps the id in check through the realities of the external environment, through intellect and reason. Then what is superego? The superego represents social and personal norms and laws and serves as an ethical constraint on behavior. It can be described as the conscience. The superego provides norms to ego to determine what is wrong and what is right. However, a person is not aware of the working of the superego, and conscience is developed by absorption of cultural values and norms of society. Now we go to socio-psychological theory. Socio-psychological personality theory recognizes the interdependence of the individual and society. The individual strives to meet the needs of the society, while society helps the individual to attain his goal. The socio-psychological theorists accept that socio-psychological factors determine personality. However, there is no general agreement as to the relative importance of social variables. Fromm emphasized the importance of social context, while Sullivan and Horney stressed interpersonal behavior, and Adler employed different variables. Horney's model suggested that human behavior results from three predominant interpersonal orientations: complaint, aggressive, and detached. Now we go to trait theory. Trait factor theory represents a quantitative approach to the study of personality. This theory postulates that an individual's personality is composed of definite predispositional attributes called traits. As I told you earlier, even a trait may be defined as any distinguishable, relatively enduring way in which one individual differs from another. That means trait remains almost relatively fixed. Traits can be considered as individual variables. There are basically three assumptions of this theory. Traits are common to many individuals and vary in absolute amounts between individuals. Traits are relatively stable. Trait can be inferred from the measurement of behavioral indicators. The most widely trait theories come from the work of Allport and Cattell. Allport bases his theory on the distinction between common traits and personal dispositions. Cattell has developed a similar set of traits through the construction of tests and the determination of factors of traits. He has identified two categories of traits: surface traits and source traits. He determined 35 surface traits by finding cluster of traits that are correlated. For example, wise, foolish; affectionate, cold; sociable, seclusive; honest, dishonest, and so on. Such traits lie on the surface of the personality and are largely determined by the underlying source traits. He identified 12 source traits. Examples of such source traits are good nature and trustfulness, critical and suspicious, maturity and realism, immaturity and evasiveness. Trait theory gives recognition to the continuity of personality. This theory is based on personality research. Now we go to self-theory. The psychoanalytic, socio-psychological, and trait theories of personality represent the more traditional approaches to explaining the complex human personality. Self-theory, also termed as organismic or field theory, emphasizes on the totality of all behaviors. This approach treats the organism as a whole to a greater degree than do any of the other theoretical formulations. there are four factors in self theory concept. One is self-image, another is ideal self, another is looking glass self, and the last one is real self. A person's self-concept gives him a sense of meaningful and consistency. Gellerman observes that the average individual is not particularly well acquainted with himself, so to speak, but he remains quiet, faithful to his not so accurate image of himself, and thereby acquires some consistency. Then what are these self concepts? Self-image. We start with self-image. Self-image is the way one sees oneself. Every person has certain beliefs about who or what he is. Taken together, these beliefs are a person's self-image or identity. Erikson has defined identity as a lifelong development, largely unconscious to the individual and his society. Now we come to ideal self. The ideal self denotes the way one would like to be. The ideal self differs from self-image in the fact that the self-image indicates the reality of a person as perceived by him, while ideal self indicates the ideal position as perceived by him. Thus, there may be a gap between these two characteristics. The ideal self is important in stimulus selectivity because a person will select those stimuli for processing which fit in with the characteristics of his ideal self. Now, after self-image and ideal image, we go to looking glass self. The looking glass self is the perception of a person about how others are perceiving his qualities and characteristics. That means how others look at him or her. This is the perception of others' perceptions. That is the way one thinks people perceive about him and not the way people actually see him. Now lastly, real self. The real self is what one really is in reality, in actuality. The self-image, it is the way one sees oneself. The ideal self, it denotes the way one would like to be, one would wishes to be. The looking glass self, the way in which others look at him or her. And the real self is the actual self. The first three aspects of self-concept are the functions of individual perception, and they may be same or different as the real self. Because maybe perceptions differ from the reality most of the times because of the perceptual error. An individual's self-image is confirmed when other persons' responses to him indicate their beliefs about who and what he corresponds with. So, we have discussed almost most of the significant aspects of personality and personality theories. Thank you very much for being there with me. See you in next lecture.